When was the last time you felt truly productive despite working long hours? If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. 85% of professionals report working over 40 hours weekly, yet studies show productivity sharply declines after 35 hours, with each additional hour actually creating more future work through mistakes and poor decisions. Well, you're stuck in a productivity paradox that's keeping you exhausted, stunting your career growth, and potentially damaging your health. I spent 5 years trapped in this same cycle, believing more hours meant more success, until I discovered the counterintuitive approach that top performers at Google, Microsoft, and other leading companies use to outperform their peers while maintaining work-life balance. What if everything you've been taught about hard work is scientifically wrong? That grinding away for 10, 12, or 14 hours a day is actually making you less effective, not more? The data shows something surprising about your brain after hour 6. It begins to work against you in ways that not only diminish your output, but create additional problems you'll have to fix tomorrow. Our culture has built an almost religious devotion to overwork. If we celebrate the executives who sleep under their desks, glorify the entrepreneurs who work 100-hour weeks, and judge each other's commitment based on who arrives earliest and leaves latest. This psychological framework has seeped into our collective consciousness, convincing us that hours worked equals value created. But neuroscience is revealing a fundamentally different reality. Research from multiple cognitive science labs has consistently demonstrated that productivity doesn't follow a linear path throughout the day. Instead, it drops precipitously after about 5 to 6 hours of focused mental effort. A landmark study from the Business Roundtable found that after 50 hours in a week, productivity per hour drops so significantly that the additional hours produce minimal or even negative returns. So think about that. Working those extra 20 hours might actually be undoing work you've already completed. The brain, despite what we'd like to believe, has biological limitations we simply cannot override with willpower. Each decision you make, each problem you solve, each email you process, creates what neuroscientists call cognitive load. This mental weight accumulates throughout the day, gradually depleting the neural resources required for quality thinking. Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg calls this attention residue, the mental debris left behind as you switch between tasks, that makes each subsequent hour less productive than the last. Microsoft's experiment with a 4-day workweek in Japan provides compelling real-world evidence. They didn't just maintain productivity, they saw it skyrocket by 40%, while simultaneously reducing electricity costs by 23%. Meetings became shorter and more focused. Unnecessary tasks were eliminated, and employees returned each day with refreshed cognitive resources. Similar results have emerged from trials across industries and countries, consistently showing that less time working often leads to more output. This cognitive fatigue affects not just productivity, but judgment. A famous study of Israeli parole judges found they were significantly more likely to grant parole early in the day or right after breaks. As mental fatigue accumulated, their decision-making defaulted to the safer option of denial, not because the cases deserved it, but because their brains lacked the energy for nuanced judgment. The same effect appears in medical diagnosis errors, which spike during the last hours of long shifts, and in financial trading decisions, which show declining quality throughout the day. Each hour beyond our cognitive limits creates what I call productivity debt. It's a deficit you'll have to pay back with interest. Every mistake made in hour 9 creates rework in hour 2 tomorrow. Every poor decision during an exhausted afternoon generates problems that will require even more time to fix. Every day pushed beyond mental capacity increases your likelihood of burnout, which can take weeks or months to recover from. History's most prolific minds seem to have understood this intuitively. Charles Darwin, despite his revolutionary output, worked just 3 focused hours daily. Writer Ernest Hemingway rarely worked past noon. Even modern luminaries like Bill Gates build their schedules around protecting their limited cognitive capacity, not extending it. Former Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer noted she could get a week's worth of work done in a focused weekend. Not by working more hours, but by eliminating the interruptions and distractions that fragment attention. The explanation for these patterns lies in our brain's natural ultradian rhythms. 90 to 120-minute cycles of peak performance followed by necessary recovery periods. Fighting against these biological cycles by pushing through is like trying to override your need for sleep. You can do it temporarily, but the quality of your thinking deteriorates in ways you often can't perceive from the inside. 5 hours of work performed with full cognitive resources, properly spaced with recovery periods, will almost always outperform 10 hours of continuous depleted effort. These natural brain rhythms reveal a startling paradox in productivity. The person who intentionally works less often achieves more. This isn't just theoretical, it's the practical reality of how our minds function at their best. While we've examined the biological limitations at play, understanding the psychological barriers preventing us from embracing this truth is equally important. Our resistance to working less stems from powerful forces: identity attachment to constant busyness, fear of being perceived as inadequate, and perhaps most significant, the invisible influence of Parkinson's law. C. Northcote Parkinson observed that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. This principle explains why simply having more hours doesn't translate to greater output. Most of us unconsciously distribute our efforts across whatever time we've allocated, regardless of what the task actually requires. Was that crucial report you've given yourself 8 hours to complete? Had you allocated 4 hours instead, your brain would have found ways to consolidate the truly important elements and eliminate the fluff. This creates what productivity researchers call the busyness illusion, the sensation of working hard without corresponding results. The contrast between deep and shallow work illuminates another dimension of this productivity paradox. Deep work, the kind that creates genuine value, requires sustained, uninterrupted focus. Studies consistently show that 90 minutes of true concentration produces far more meaningful output than 3 hours of fragmented attention. Yet most workplaces incentivize the appearance of productivity, answering emails, attending meetings, being visibly on, rather than creating conditions for genuine focus. So what's particularly fascinating is how strategic rest enhances creative problem solving. During periods of mental recovery, your brain doesn't actually shut down. It shifts into a different mode of processing. These incubation periods allow your mind to consolidate information, make unexpected connections, and generate innovative solutions. It's why that brilliant breakthrough often hits you in the shower, during a walk, or while making dinner, not during hour 10 of staring at your computer. The concept of productive constraints leverages the psychology of limitation to enhance performance. By intentionally restricting your working hours, you force your brain to prioritize what genuinely matters. When you know you only have 5 focused hours, you'll naturally eliminate low-value activities and direct your energy toward high-impact work. This isn't about working frantically faster. It's about working deliberately smarter, distinguishing between motion and progress. Top performers implement specific methodologies to maximize their limited working hours. Time blocking, scheduling dedicated periods for specific types of work, prevents tasks from expanding beyond their true requirements. The batching technique groups similar activities together to minimize the cognitive switching cost that fragment attention. These aren't just productivity hacks, they're strategies that align with your brain's natural operating system. The 85% rule provides another powerful framework. Focus on completing the most important 85% of tasks excellently rather than attempting to finish 100% at a mediocre level. This approach recognizes that the final 15% of most projects delivers minimal value relative to the time invested. Time better spent on high-leverage activities elsewhere. Forward-thinking organizations are already implementing these principles at scale. Companies experimenting with 4-day work weeks consistently report improved recruitment success, higher employee retention, and, crucially, performance metrics that match or exceed their 5-day competitors. These aren't isolated examples, but evidence of a fundamental truth about human productivity. Quality of hours trumps quantity every time. The ultimate irony is that strategic work reduction often accelerates career advancement rather than hindering it. When you shift from hours-based productivity to impact-based productivity, several things happen simultaneously. The quality of your output improves dramatically, your capacity for innovative thinking expands, and you preserve the mental energy required for relationship building, an often overlooked component of professional success. Meanwhile, those grinding away for 12-hour days eventually hit the inevitable wall of burnout, creating a productivity deficit that can take months or years to overcome. Let's close with a fascinating truth from Iceland's workplace revolution. When they reduced work hours to around 35 per week, while maintaining salaries, something remarkable happened. Productivity either stayed the same or increased. This wasn't just a small experiment. It involved over 2,500 workers, with 86% of Iceland's working population eventually gaining access to shorter hours. The sweet spot appears to be 35-40 hours weekly. Beyond 50 hours, productivity plummets, and after 55, additional time becomes virtually meaningless. Chris Bailey's experiment proved this dramatically. Working 90 hours yielded barely more results than a mere 20. The math is clear. Your best work happens when you work less.